Hello, Anderson here. Today we're going to be talking about the Suicide Squad. Not Suicide Squad, that was years ago. We're going to be talking about the good one. Alright, so Suicide Squad, written and directed by James Gunn. It's his triumphant return. I'm going to do this review, if you can call it that, as though I'm talking to people who aren't deeply steeped in the DC universe. That's me. I'm not deeply versed in the DC nor the Marvel or really any tentpole franchise. I mean, that's not really what I respond to. I like many of us, I got a little bit of the fatigue. Honestly, the fatigue began with Iron Man, the original. So, I mean, I've never been in. But that's on me. I mean, I wish I could enjoy them as much as the next guy or girl, but I just don't. And when it comes to DC movies, woo! I think it goes without saying that they are, for the most part, are a big letdown. And this one was not. Okay, so let's just start by saying James Gunn is talent. Ancient tweets aside, the man has a real knack for comedy and horror and action. And, of course, he made Guardians of the Galaxy, both 1 and 2. He also did Super with Rainn Wilson, which was very dark, about a guy who would like to be a superhero. Probably would have got more traction if it wasn't for a movie called Kick-Ass, which came out right around the same time. Very similar movies, but one even darker than the other. And that darker one was James Gunn's Super. So this vibe, the tone of the Suicide Squad is like a cross between Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a little soft. It's good, but it's a little soft, and as dark at times as Super. So it's like a crossbreed. It's a hybrid of those two movies as far as vibe goes. The story, I'm not even going to get into the story so much. It's a bunch of mercenaries, people, that old tropey people, prisoners stuck in prison, but then they get a deal from the government. Viola Davis reprises her role. There are some repeats from the first Suicide Squad, which I had banned. I said I would never ever watch this because I could tell what they were selling. What they were selling with the original Suicide Squad was, hey, aren't we edgy and cool and anti-establishment and counterculture? But it was made by the machine. And it felt like, and I'm not going to name names, but it felt like the studio had a lot more to do. The suits had a lot more to do with that first Suicide Squad. And I think that with bringing James Gunn in, it seems to me, I mean, you look on the IMDb, it says written by James Gunn. There's not like a laundry list of other people who were also credited with writing this one. It seems to me that they kind of were hands off and they let him do his thing, which is dicey. It's sketchy when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's the problem with so many of these tentpole franchise movies, is when they're made for hundreds of millions of dollars, yes, the bean counters, the suits get a little bit, they start wringing their hands, and they're like, well, maybe we bring this guy and then bring her in. We do a melting pot and try and brainstorm the best ideas. And what happens is, there's so many cooks. It's way too many cooks in that kitchen. That did not feel like the case here. Yes, it took tens, I don't want to say tens of thousands, that seems like laying it on a little thick, but it took thousands and thousands of people to bring this vision to fruition. Most big movies take thousands and thousands of people, but it seems like there was one individual visionary at the helm, and let me tell you, it's exactly what you would want in a summer blockbuster popcorn movie. It is, I say that Marvel movies are elevated action. This is like elevated B movie. Like, this is a B movie in its truest form, but done with millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's the old trope that we've all seen a bunch of times. Prisoners who are really good at their job, but their job is deemed as not part of what we want in society, so they're marksmen, they're trained assassins, they're killers, or they're Harley Quinn, and they're in jail. But then Viola Davis, who works for the government, the U.S. government, the naughty, evil U.S. government. We're back to that a little bit. And I'll get a little bit more on that in a minute. But she gives him a second chance, and hey, I won't kill your daughter, or I'll commute your sentence if you do this for us. There's this island out in the ocean. Oh, that's where islands are, in oceans. But you got to go over there, and essentially they create a coup because they got some stuff going. It's not nuclear weapons. It's big space creatures. This becomes a creature feature, which I think that most of us expected, coming from James Gunn's mind, and they assemble a team. And there's a bit of a red herring, and I don't want to get into all that right off the bat, but I want to talk about the main characters a little bit, like King Shark. Who is voiced by, I should have probably ended with King Shark, but we got the Harlequin. We got the flag guy, who I guess was in the first one. I was starting to say, I was going to ban that movie. I was planning on banning Suicide Squad, but then somebody who's very clever and cute forced me to go see Suicide Squad. And fortunate for me, when I got to see Suicide Squad, I was very upset. This is the original. I don't even want to call it the original, because you can't. These movies are completely different animals. I was the only one in the theater. I saw it like third, fourth week of its release a few years ago, and so I was pacing back and forth, yelling at the screen, which is not the greatest way to watch a movie, but I was angry throughout the movie. And I'm not naming names. Like I said, the filmmakers might have had great intentions, but I feel like they were hamstrung. So, but there are some, the flag guy, who I'm not real familiar with. He's in TV shows and whatnot. He did an admirable job. Like it's the kind of thing that Michael Biehn would have done maybe back in the day. And then got Idris Elba. Oh, Bloodsport. He's kicking ass. It's probably my favorite role for Idris Elba that I've seen to date, where his name's not Stringer Bell. And then Harley Quinn, like I mentioned. I'm sure I'm leaving some names out. It's an ensemble cast. We got a whole bunch of... We got Polka Dot Man by Dave Mastroianni. I think that's how you said it. I'm pretty sure I nailed his name. Dave Mastroianni. Love that guy. First time I saw him was in The Dark Knight. Speaking of Dark Knight, let me talk about Dark Knight for a moment. Right? You can't talk about a DC movie without talking about Nolan's Dark Knight. DC continues to disappoint in the wake of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Now, the second one, I'm not breaking new ground by saying it's the greatest comic book movie I've ever seen. I think a lot of you will probably agree with that. I'm sure that someone like the Endgame Civil War might give it a run for its money from some of you. But for me, Dark Knight. And Dark Knight's the only comic book movie that I have seen to date that it is able to pull off that dark tone, that serious tone, that dramatic tone at times, where I was actually concerned for the characters. I actually had some moments where even though I know in my brain I knew that they were going to make it through, it was so intense, such intense filmmaking, such masterful filmmaking, that like I was in for the ride. I've seen many other comic book movies try to emulate that sense, and it falls very flat. And it's awful when a movie is trying to be something that it's not, and it's exposed. I don't know if this is the right reaction, but it makes me pissed. I get angry at everyone involved. And I don't know if that's the right reaction, but I'm sitting there in the theater like furious and inspecting the details of the ceiling with the eye rolling going on there. But this one does that a couple times here and there, but doesn't lay it on too thick, always punctuates it with a good joke. Speaking of the comedy wasn't the greatest comedy I've ever seen, but it wasn't the worst. And never did I hear a joke in the movie where I'm like, that just was a clunker. That was awful. Didn't happen. First time I laughed out loud was in King Shark's line where he's looking at his hand. For those of you who've already seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It's early on in the movie. And that first laugh was like, okay, there's going to be some good James Gunn comedy in here that we've come to expect. I should say that King Shark, which is essentially the Maui & Sons logo, if you recall. Maui & Sons in the 70s. Maybe I'll try and put a picture right here. But Maui & Sons had a dude that looked just like King Shark. And, unexplained. Doesn't explain where the weasel comes from. Or King Shark. Maybe I would know if I had read these comic books. Maybe they're based on graphic novels. I don't know. I just went to see it as a movie. All right? I shouldn't have to have a homework assignment before I see a movie. It's an effing movie, right? So I went to see this movie without having a whole lot of knowledge about the universe that is Suicide Squad. Of course, I know about Harley Quinn. It's just a very original, refreshing, fun movie, and it's a ride, like in the best sense of the word. And I hope you enjoy it. And thank you very much. If you'd like to hear me talk more about this on the Film Vault or CinemAddicts, links down there below, like I said. And I'd like to thank my friends over at Deity. They hooked me up with my Lav for this week. This is a W Lav Pro from Deity, and my friends over at Aperture sent it out for me to play with. So thank you to you guys. And we will talk again next week. Next week is Free Guy. Free Guy! I wonder if we'll get a good The Free Guy in a few years. I mean, that's assuming that Free Guy's not going to be good. But now I guess that's all you got to do is just put a The. I mean, I saw a trailer for The Batman. Ah, jeez. All right, talk to you. Oh, let's go watch Slither. Talk to you next week.